The heat of early autumn hung heavy over the deserted farmland on the outskirts of Springfield. Elias had insisted on inspecting the sites himself, his young apprentice, Thomas, and the senior pharmacist, Mr. Donovan, trailing behind him. The sun was relentless, a white-hot coin in a cloudless sky, beating down on the abandoned church, the fallow fields, the quiet mining claim, all places where the poor had lived and where bodies had recently been found. They had spent the morning combing through the brush and dirt, finding nothing of note. By midday, the heat was oppressive. Thomas, panting, drew water from an old stone well, gulping it down before they pressed on. Elias pointed to a patch of land where vegetable plants lay withered and rotten, their produce blackened and collapsing into the soil. Did the owner of this plot die from the sickness? Thomas squinted. Must have. These crops are ruined, ready for harvest not long ago. No one would just leave them. He took another step and his boot crunched on something soft. With a yelp, he kicked the object away. A dead rat, its fur matted and skin showing ugly, weeping sores. Elias's gaze sharpened. The rat was diseased too. A cold thought crystallized in his mind, but before he could grasp it fully, a wave of dizziness washed over him. The world tilted. He swayed, catching himself against a fence post. Thomas rushed to his side. "Boss? You all right?" "It's nothing. Just the heat," Elias managed, his voice tight. The familiar, crawling need was beginning to whisper along his nerves. "We should head back." On the ride back to the Evergreen Apothecary, Thomas fretted over his pallor. When they arrived, the shop assistant, Clara, was there collecting medicine for her ailing mother. Thomas called out to her, his voice too loud in the quiet shop, asking for mint and other remedies for heatstroke. Clara turned, took one look at Elias's ashen face, and hurried to fetch a tincture. When she returned, he had vanished into his private study. She knocked softly. From within, Elias's voice was muffled, telling her he was just changing his sweat-dampened shirt. Inside, Elias's hands were not steady as he prepared the final dose from his dwindling supply. The sharp scent of antiseptic filled the small room. He disposed of the evidence methodically before emerging, forcing a calm he did not feel. He drank the remedy Clara offered in one swallow. "How is your mother?" he asked, changing the subject. Clara's expression clouded. "The doctor says it's a matter of days now. We've made the arrangements." Her voice caught, but she held her composure. "She's confused most of the time. Calls for me and for you." Elias felt a pang. Clara's mother had cared for him in his earliest days. "When the time comes, send for me. I should be there." Clara nodded, a tear escaping. "You've been so kind to us." Kindness. The word echoed hollowly in Elias's mind as he retreated to his study. He didn't feel kind. He felt like a conduit, channeling whatever scraps of peace he could muster toward others, leaving himself barren and hollow. Did that count as luck? Was Nathan's presence in his life a form of fortune? A bitter smile touched his lips, more like a curse Nathan had walked into blind. He sat at his desk, the smooth wood cool under his palms. After a long moment, he took out a sheet of paper and began to write, the nib scratching in the quiet. "Dearest Eleanor, I must trouble you once more, for I have no one else to turn to. The morphine you last provided is nearly gone." The letter finished, sealed, and placed in a drawer, he felt a profound weariness. The morphine was a rope thrown to a drowning man, now pulling him into a deeper, darker ocean. Trading one dependency for another, a more clinical, more insidious master. He lay on the narrow cot, seeking a few moments of respite. Sleep was a treacherous country. Flames erupted behind his eyelids, the roar of a collapsing timber house, the blurred, terrible shape of his father's remains. He jolted awake, a cry strangled in his throat. Then the pain came, not from the dream, but from his own betrayed body. A deep, bone-aching agony uncoiled from his core. The dose had been too small, too weak. He rolled from the cot, knees hitting the wooden floor with a sickening thud. His legs were useless, tangled in sheets of fire. Gasping, he pressed the back of his skull against the floorboards, as if the pressure could split the pain, share it with the unfeeling wood. His fingers clawed at the air, searching for an anchor in the swirling nausea and torment. From outside, a voice sliced through his private hell. "Well, look who's here. The commander." Nathan's voice, unmistakable, boomed a reply. "Is he resting? I'll wake him myself." Panic, cold and clear, cut through the feverish haze. "Nathan." Using his elbows, Elias dragged himself toward the cot. Every movement was a battle. He heard the footsteps in the hall, closer, closer. With a final, wrenching effort, he hauled himself onto the mattress, pulling the quilt over his trembling body just as the door swung open. He forced his eyes shut, regulating his breath. The floorboards creaked as Nathan approached. Elias let his eyelids flutter open, feigning drowsy wakefulness. "Did I wake you?" Nathan's voice was softer now. He reached out, brushing a smudge of dust from Elias's forehead. "No, I was just resting." Beneath the quilt, Elias dug his nails into a pressure point on his thigh, the sharp, clean pain a welcome distraction from the gnawing hunger in his veins. Nathan tugged the quilt down. "You're drenched. Don't smother yourself." His hand moved as if to check for fever, and Elias's heart hammered against his ribs. A blood-curdling scream from the shop front saved him. It was followed by the crash of overturning furniture and the sound of someone stumbling. Frantic. "Boss! Mr. Donovan! It's Thomas!" Elias and Nathan were on their feet in an instant, rushing into the main room. Thomas was on the floor, thrashing like a man possessed. His eyes were wide with a terror that was not his own, his skin erupting in angry red welts and blisters. The other employees had backed away, a ring of horrified faces. Elias didn't hesitate. He dropped to his knees beside the boy, gripping his wrist to feel the racing, erratic pulse. Thomas, in his delirium, shoved him away with surprising strength and lurched toward the large water barrel in the corner. "Water," he rasped before plunging his head into it. "Get him out," Elias commanded. "Now, gloves on. Burn everything he touched today. Fetch the rubbing alcohol, light the purification herbs." Chaos descended into controlled frenzy. Thomas, unconscious, was carried to a quarantined room. When the flurry subsided, Nathan turned to Elias, his face grave. "What happened?" Elias was examining Thomas's symptoms, his mind racing. "We were at the sites this morning. He didn't touch anything I didn't..." He paused. "Wait, he drank from a well. The old well on the east side pasture. I didn't..." Nathan considered this, then shook his head. The pasture wells are isolated, not connected to the town's water system. It's stagnant water. If someone were poisoning the supply, that'd be a stupid place to do it. The reach would be too small. The logic was sound, yet the evidence was in the quarantined room. Elias ordered a sample brought from the east pasture well. Tests on lab rats were grimly conclusive. The water was tainted. But checks on other, connected town wells showed no contamination. The puzzle deepened, taunting him. Days blurred into sleepless nights at the apothecary. Elias pored over notes, boiled herbs, and observed caged animals, his frustration mounting. Clara brought him a lunch he'd forgotten to eat, scolding him gently. "You can't run on air, boss. Even the strongest engine needs fuel." To placate her, he washed his hands and sat. "What did you make?" "Corn chowder, stewed greens, some pickled beets." She laid out the simple, wholesome meal. "It's all we could get. The farmers are saying the yields are terrible this season. Vegetable prices have gone sky high." Elias picked up his spoon. "It hasn't been a drought. Why the poor yield?" He stopped, the spoon halfway to his mouth. "Yield. Crops." Connection sparked, violent and bright. The blighted fields. The dead rat. The isolated, poisoned well. He slammed the spoon down, making Clara jump. Of course. How did I miss it? He was out the door before she could protest, heading straight for the pastures. He collected samples from different blighted plots, labeled them, and rushed back to his lab. He minced the diseased plant matter, mixed it with feed, and gave it to a new batch of rats. Then he waited. The progression was a chilling mimicry of Thomas's illness. Agitation, frantic thirst, violent clashes over water, and finally, for half of them, death marked by skin lesions. The source wasn't the water. It was the land. Someone had poisoned the soil. The crops absorbed the toxin. Animals that ate them fell sick with a desperate thirst, and those that stumbled into isolated wells contaminated them in their death throes. Thomas, not knowing the pasture well was dead water, had taken a fateful drink. The virus was still unstable, only a 50% mortality rate in the rats. This was a test. A small-scale, cruel experiment on Springfield's poor. Once it was perfected, once it was introduced into the main water lines, Elias felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. He reached for a glass of water, then froze, staring at it. Knowing the truth made every swallow a potential gamble. He had no cure. His treatments for Thomas had only prolonged the inevitable. The boy was gone. How could he protect an entire city? In a stately, guarded house on the city's outskirts, men in white lab coats delivered a report to Vivian. The new strain will reach 70% efficacy within 2 days. Should we deploy another field test? Vivian's gaze drifted toward the closed door of the sunroom. No, we've drawn too much attention. Proceed with the final preparations. I will give the order when the time is right. After the scientists left, she climbed the stairs and entered the sunroom. Daniel was there, as he had been for days, seated quietly by the window. She sank onto the sofa beside him, letting her head rest against his shoulder. You heard? Daniel's body tensed, but he did not pull away. These forced intimacies were her weapon, and his penance for staying. I wonder, she murmured, her voice devoid of its usual steel, how far your compassion for the masses truly extends. What would you sacrifice for them? Daniel kept his eyes forward. Harm inflicted returns to the sender. I wish to see no one suffer. That includes you. Vivian sat up, a fragile hope kindling in her eyes. Is that concern for them or for me? Daniel's gaze dropped to his hands, folded in his lap. Is there a difference in the end? The hope guttered out. Vivian's shoulders slumped. No, I suppose there isn't. She stood, the movement weary. What would it take for you to make me stop? Truly stop? Her next words were deliberate, designed to shock. If I said I wanted you to stay with me tonight? Daniel recoiled as if struck. Vivian, don't. You say my name now? She gave a brittle laugh. Well, Daniel, do we have a bargain? Please just go. Fine. The word was a blade she turned on herself. You're free to leave. My bed isn't lacking for company. God knows you've been poor company anyway. She fled the room before her composure shattered. Alone, Daniel sat in the silence. His eyes fell on Vivian's small beaded purse, left on a side table. A war waged within him. Finally, he murmured a prayer of contrition, opened the clasp, and removed 2 sheets of paper. After reading them, his face paled. He slipped them into the inner lining of his jacket. As he rose to leave, a figure blocked the doorway. Before he could react, a cloud of fine, cloyingly sweet powder filled his vision. He choked, his world dissolving into dizziness and then into black. Consciousness returned in fractured pieces. He was hot, his mind adrift in a foggy sea. The scent of jasmine and sandalwood was overpowering. A soft, warm presence pressed against him. In his confusion, a name rose to his lips. Vivian? The only answer was the slide of arms around his neck. In the disorienting haze, the touch felt like salvation and sin intertwined. He murmured the name again, his own resistance melting in the artificial heat. But then a laugh, light and unfamiliar, pierced the fog. His eyes flew open. The woman in his arms was beautiful, but she was not Vivian. With a cry of revulsion, he pushed her away, scrambling to his feet. He snatched up his discarded outer robe and stumbled into the courtyard. At the old pump, he worked the handle furiously, dousing his head and body in icy water until his teeth chattered and his skin turned blue. He knelt on the wet stones, trembling, prayers of cleansing tumbling from his lips, only to be drowned out by the shameful, fragmented memories. A sardonic voice cut through the night. Such a drastic reaction. It looked like you were enjoying yourself. Kenshir stepped from the shadows, his face gaunt with sleepless malice. The great Daniel. The untouchable. The Buddha has no place for you now. Daniel rose slowly, water dripping from his chin. You. Why? Because I love her. Kenshir spat. She suffers for you, so you should taste a little suffering too. Don't pretend you're above it. I've seen the way you look at her. I just helped you admit it. Daniel's fist clenched, a foreign impulse screaming through his years of discipline. Go on, deny it, Kenshir taunted, stepping closer. Who was it you were calling for in there? Who was on your mind when you had your hands on that woman? Daniel could not answer. The fight drained from him, leaving a hollow shame. Kenshir shoved him, sending him sprawling. You failed your God, and you're failing her. If you have any decency left, you'll set her free. Permanently. Long after Kenshir left, Daniel remained on the ground, the cold from the stones and his wet clothes seeping into his soul. Back at the apothecary, Elias was roused from a troubled sleep at his desk by a gentle touch on his shoulder. Eleanor had returned. You look terrible, she said, her voice thick with worry. She placed a heavy parcel on the table. The medicine? He asked, his voice rough. Yes. But Elias, with the fighting in the south, it's getting harder to source. What will you do after this? He glanced at the parcel. This is the last time I'll ask. After things are settled, I'll try to stop. Really? He offered a wan smile. Really? Eleanor sighed, her eyes sweeping the chaotic room. Father is moving the family out of Springfield. He's bought passage overseas. I think it's time I went to find Robert. He wrote to you? He did. He's managing. Found work. Then go, Elias said, his tone gentle. Find your peace. Don't look back. What about you? Her hand covered his. I have this awful feeling that if I leave now, I'll never see you again. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. This is why I didn't want you to find me, Ellie. You should remember the boy who died years ago. Not this. Promise me, she insisted, her grip tightening. Promise me you'll be all right. However this ends, promise you'll survive. He looked past her, out the window to where the sky met the distant hills. All right, he whispered, the word feeling like a lie. When spring comes, and the peonies bloom in the garden again, I'll take you to see the finest play in the city. She smiled, but the sadness in her eyes didn't lift. The breakthrough, when it came, was delivered by the last person Elias expected. In the gray light of a drizzling dawn, Daniel came to the apothecary door, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. He handed Elias a sealed envelope. Information on the sickness, and on the plans to use it against Springfield. It is incomplete, but it may help you. And Nathan. Elias took it, his pulse quickening. How did you get this? What did you promise Vivian? A faint, serene smile touched Daniel's lips. Do not worry for me. I will be leaving Springfield soon. I wish to entrust this to a friend. In this world, I find I have but one. Where will you go? Elias asked, a strange foreboding gripping him. To a place I have long wished to see, Daniel said. It is not far. We will meet again. He bowed slightly, then turned and walked away, his footsteps fading into the patter of the rain. Daniel, Elias called out. The figure paused, looking back. My tea supply is low. When you return, will you blend me a new batch? Daniel stood for a moment in the silver rain, then gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod and continued on his path. The documents were a revelation. The partial research notes gave Elias the missing key to the antitoxin. Within hours, he had a working formula. The other document, a tactical briefing, named names. One in particular, Commissioner Charles Mason. Elias let out a long, slow breath. The trap was now set. He called for Clara. Find a courier heading for the capital today. This must go out immediately. As she prepared the letter, he added, begin quietly dismissing the non-essential staff at the house. Give them a month's wages. Clara's hand stilled. Is it ending? Not ending. The final act is beginning. He looked out at the wind whipping through the apothecary, scattering papers. The storm is coming. We should not be caught unprepared. The antitoxin worked. The celebration in the apothecary was palpable. Nathan arrived, his relief evident. He ruffled Elias's hair affectionately. You did it. I'll contact the military medical depot in the next state. We'll get this into mass production. As Nathan's hand pulled away, he frowned, staring at his palm. Several strands of Elias's dark hair lay across it. He looked at Elias more closely, the pronounced hollows under his eyes, the sharpness of his cheekbones, the web of faint veins visible at his temples. Elias, Nathan said, his voice dropping, are you sure you're all right? It's more than tiredness. Elias turned away, busying himself with removing his lab coat. Just haven't been eating properly. I'll rest now. Nathan caught his wrist. You'll eat first. I'm not letting you waste away. They were interrupted by a soldier rushing in. Commander, a body in the river. We've recovered it. Another victim? Elias asked, pulling his wrist free. No, sir. It's clean. Peaceful, almost. A shame, really. It's a clergyman. Clergyman. Elias went very still. Memories collided. A conversation about faith, about a longing for a distant, peaceful shore. A place I have long wished to see. He bolted past Nathan, out the door and down the street toward the river, a cold certainty freezing his blood. Nathan shouted after him, giving chase. By the time Elias pushed through the crowd at the riverbank, he already knew. The waterlogged hat, the single discarded sandal, the sodden robes. Daniel's face pale and still. The old chapel was filled with light. 1,000 vigil candles flickered around a simple, open casket. Elias moved among them, tending the flames. Nathan had finally gotten Daniel's young acolyte to sleep and now stood silently, watching. A gust of wind made the flames dance. Elias shielded them instinctively. Do you think the afterlife is cold? He asked softly. Nathan came up behind him, wrapping his own coat around Elias's shoulders. Not for him. He's earned his peace. The chapel door creaked open. Vivian stood there utterly undone. Her hair was wild, her dress torn at the hem, her face a mask of bare, uncomprehending agony. She staggered toward the casket, her body rejecting the truth her eyes were forced to see. She lifted the sheer cloth from Daniel's face. A sound escaped her, not a sob, but the air leaving a mortally wounded creature. She turned her shattered gaze to Elias. Did he say anything? What would it change? Elias replied, his voice flat. Vivian's lips trembled. She walked toward them, and Nathan shifted protectively. She gave a broken laugh at the gesture. You want the Japanese plans, don't you, Commander? I know them. All of them. Now, answer my question. Elias exchanged a look with Nathan, then stepped forward. He placed 4 wooden beads in her palm. He was holding these. We found them clutched in his hand. Vivian looked down. 4 beads from a broken rosary. Each one was freshly, carefully carved with a single letter. Together, they spelled Nexttime. A wail tore from her, raw and unearthly, echoing in the stone chapel. She collapsed against the casket. When she emerged later, her face was a dry, cracked desert. She gave Nathan the details. A 3-pronged attack planned for the week of the harvest moon, preceded by the release of the perfected virus. Elias left for the medical depot the next day. On the platform, Nathan held his hand a moment too long. "Come back soon." Elias nodded, a simple gesture that felt like a farewell. As the train pulled away, Nathan's aide, Joseph, approached. "Sir, a girl named Clara is looking for you. Says it's about Mr. Shaw's nursemaid. She's passed." He missed saying goodbye. Nathan went to the small house where Clara's mother had lived. The old woman, in her final moments, had clutched at his sleeve, calling not for Elias, but for Shaw. She had pressed a tarnished silver locket into his hand. A baby's locket, engraved on the back with a single word, Shaw. The inconsistency nagged at him. A locket with a given name but no family name? He thought of the investigator's report. No prominent Shaw family in the region Elias claimed as home. Later, a man was brought to his office, a storyteller from the plains. "You knew the town that burned? 20 years ago? The big fire?" "Sure. Tragic. Were there wealthy families? One where the mother came from back east?" The storyteller's face lit up. "Oh yes, the Carters. The lady was from back east. A beauty. Her wedding was the talk of the territory for years. Good people. Ran the biggest pharmacy for miles. Called it the Carter Dispensary. Carter. Elias Shaw. Shaw was not a surname. It was half of one. The family?" Nathan pressed, his mouth dry. "All lost in the fire. The whole house came down. The young master, Henry Carter, such a bright boy, gone with the rest." Nathan dismissed the man. He stood alone in his office, the pieces slotting together with dreadful, silent finality. Henry Carter. Not Elias Shaw. A ghost with a vendetta, living in a house named for his mother's maiden name. A painter of birds flying from flames, with hands that now, he knew, had orchestrated death after death. He drove to the house on the hill. The garden was empty, the windows dark. Every corner whispered of the man he thought he knew, the man who had never existed. When Clara saw him from the gate, her face whitened. She turned and ran. The medical work was finished. The antitoxin was in production. News of Commissioner Charles Mason's grotesque death, found with a silver hairpin plunged in his throat, made the papers. Elias felt nothing. On his journey home, his carriage was stopped by another vehicle. A driver handed him a picnic basket. "From Miss Eleanor, sir. She insisted you have it now." Elias opened it. Inside was a mess of poorly wrapped dumplings. Everyone split open, the filling leaking out. The secret is out. The message was clear. Eleanor was already on a ship. Clara had gotten to her. He gave the driver a sealed package with instructions to mail it from the neighboring state in 3 days' time. Then he continued toward Springfield, walking the last miles. A military truck intercepted him before he reached the gates. Joseph looked pained. "The commander sent me to bring you home, sir." "To bring me or to arrest me?" "Please, sir. Just get in the truck." As the vehicle jolted over the rough road, a paper bag from Elias's belongings tumbled to the floor. Sweet buns from the depot town spilled out, rolling under the wheels before he could catch them. They were crushed into the mud, their sweet filling oozing into the dirt. He stared at his empty hand. "It's nothing," he said softly. "It doesn't matter now." The house was draped in funeral white. Elias walked through the familiar rooms, each step heavy with the weight of memory. Nathan stood in the center of the main hall, turning as he entered. Their eyes met across the silent space. Elias took 10 final steps, each one an echo of a stolen moment, a whispered promise, a lie dressed as affection. He stopped before Nathan. "It's so quiet," Elias said, his voice unnaturally calm, "as if the whole city has emptied out and it's just us." Nathan's jaw worked. You're not even gonna try to explain, are you? I'm tired of performances. Aren't you? I never performed. The anger finally broke through, low and ragged. That was your role, wasn't it? Henry. Henry Carter. The name hung between them, a ghost given form. Elias flinched, a tiny, almost invisible movement. It's been a long time since anyone called me that. Nathan grabbed his arm, his grip vice-like. All this time, the hatred for the fire, the rage at the mention of that town. This hand, he lifted Elias's slender fingers, heals people, and kills them. Elias didn't struggle. If you've heard the story, then you know what I had to become to survive. I had to bury Henry Carter in the ashes. He pulled free and walked to the painting that hung in the hall. A single bird soaring from a vortex of orange and red. Everyone you wondered about. Everyone who died. It was me. From the beginning. The kidnappings, the shootings in the city. The silver pin killer you all hunted. He yanked the painting from the wall, the frame cracking. I painted this to remember the fire I crawled out of. To remember the price that must be paid. He let the ruined canvas fall to the floor. The bird was torn in two. I did it all, Elias said, his voice now empty, his eyes meeting Nathan's, holding the devastation there without flinching. For blood, and I would do it again.